Okay. All right, so we're back. And are we live on YouTube? Great. So, Arij and Eliza, thank you for sharing with us this incredible work of research and insight. I want to give the word to Arij and Eliza because I know that they have something to say before the Q&A starts. Because it's perhaps the most important thing to be said today and every day.
Yes, thank you, Denise. So we are witnessing the ongoing Nakba catastrophe in occupied Palestine till today. And the fact that media and institutions, especially in Europe, are censored and silent, we would like to show solidarity and state something before talking about the film.
Yeah, and in a continuation to the statement made by my colleague Tina Mimi yesterday, today marks the 73rd anniversary of al-Nakba, the catastrophe, where thousands and thousands and thousands were violently expelled from their towns and villages to make way for the Zionist settler colonial project that is today the State of Israel. As we speak now, we are witnessing the continuation of this ethnic cleansing, most glaringly with recent events in the neighborhood of Sheikh Jarrah and the violent and brutal manifestations of power being enacted upon the Palestinian population on all fronts within Israel, in the West Bank, and in Gaza. Decolonization is not a metaphor, it is the current reality of Palestinians within Palestine, but also four generations of refugees who are demanding and claiming their right to return as they rush towards heavily militarized borders drawn by colonial forces and contesting them. There are no two sides with colonizer and colonized. We can't continue without acknowledging and amplifying the voices of our Palestinian colleagues who are telling us that they're not okay, but they will continue to exercise the right to resist, to defend their right to land, to return to life. In their collective resistance, they reveal to us the road towards possible futures of decolonization, emancipation, and freedom. We must listen, we must echo, we must amplify their voices. Let us put a halt to this colonization machine. Issue statements where we can, utilize our platforms where we can, gather to educate and learn, protest in large numbers, and resist in solidarity with the land and people of Palestine.
Thank you, Arij. Thank you for saying what needs to be said.
Thank you.
So I was thinking while I was watching the video that we have transformed water in a violent way, and we often blame it for the troubles or the conflict or the dangers that it brings onto us. It's toxicity, it's poisoned, and it's wrath on the coast. But you said something about the naturalization or becoming naturalizing yourself in order to fit into the context, to the new environment that is enforced upon you. And looking at the violence on a daily basis that is enforced against Palestinians and Palestine, I wonder whether we are naturalizing the violence. And through this violence, there has to be some kind of a mutation or a regaining of a new form of mobilization against the naturalization, against both elements that are externally enforced and both, let's say, that are more insidious, like the water that is under the land that the Tunis is built on. Because again, the metaphor of building on water can generate discussions of being adaptable, but at the same time can generate conversations about not being able to take root. Now, speaking about taking roots, I think your starting point, looking at Dido and how she kind of inspired this research project in Tunis, I would like you to maybe mention a few words about who she is and what actually the Dido problem means.
So Dido, or Elisa, is a female virtue we came across during the research in our last project. So in general, engage with water and mythology. And we were inspired by her because she crosses the Mediterranean, and throughout her story, she combines so many different geographies. So she is of Phoenician origin from Tyre, and her husband, her love, gets killed by her brother for money, and she's fleeing over water, leaving all her valuables and starting to find land and finding solidarity in the north of Africa. And we wanted to engage with her and finding her in different stories. So maybe Arish, you want to also continue about.
Yeah, and also on her journey, she stopped by Greece, and then she found this temple that had a 70 virgin women that are there for sailors for pleasure. So she took, she released them, and then she arrived to the North African coast, and then she was not welcome, but she found the king there, and then she was like, I just need a piece of land to live with my companions. And then her request was satisfied, provided that the land that she asked for can be encompassed by an ox hide or the skin of a bull. So she intuitively cut it into a long, thin strip and used it to mark this territory of land where she wants to live. And so we use this as a starting point to try to find ways to think beyond present understandings of territories and hegemonic history writing and truth telling. Yeah.
Are there any questions from the audience, or I can continue with some of my own? Yeah. How did the myth of Dido come back into life by being there and by engaging with the local community? What could they say about her? What did they not know about her?
So, I mean, for us, we were interested in not producing work that is divorced from the voices of the people in the street. So, in that process, we came across a design studio there where we built together a structure on which you see in the beginning of the film, where we put the screen, and then it was roaming the streets of Tunisia and Medina in Tunisia, and then in Tunis, and then we on the screen it says نلوج على شكون, meaning that we're looking for someone, we're looking for Dido, have you seen her? And then at the beginning people were giggling, and even before that, when we were developing the work, we had a lot of conversations with people, and they're saying why you want to talk about Alisa, and she's in the past, and how do you... And then people started telling us how their grandmother is called Alisa, and what it means to bring this back into the present. And then when in the installation, for us it was about bringing her into the present as if she actually exists, because her story continues, and then seeing if this moment can create can open up a space for people to connect to their own desires, or to start telling us something about themselves. And eventually people started saying these things, saying that how can you talk about this now? خلاص, our dreams are already vanished, or not believing in something bigger than yourself. So for us, that was one of the moments where people encountered and engaged.
Yeah, and people know her, but they don't really remember her. So they are kind of aware that she's the founder of their land in a way. And they also know about her kind of finding a way, because the Dido problem, the title, actually comes from a mathematical term that is present till today, the isoperimetric, which is kind of enclosing a largest possible area with a round shape or with a circle. So she's kind of resisting the idea of territory, or territory as an oppressive system itself. So I think her way of, or her like power in a way, is still kind of people are still aware of her, but at the same time they're like, why do you want to talk about her? She's kind of dead. So there was a lot of funny responses actually in that intervention. And but then eventually, sometimes they would say, we saw her, and finding her in different people and in the soil and in the water. And this is what is we wanted to also tell in the film.
So in a way, you're bringing her myth back to life to speak about reality. Now, I would like to ask you to speak a bit about this, the boundary, the perhaps very blurred boundary between mythology and reality, especially seeing as what is happening today in Palestine is geared or motivated or used, the mythologies are used as propaganda to justify actions. So in the case of Dido, her mythology or her story opens up a conversation about the position where women are either erased from history or erased from narratives that relate to power and community building and, in a way, some kind of authority. How do you relate to Dido today, and how did you find yourself to relate to the women in Tunis who would find out more about her?
I think when it's about mythology and the meaning of mythology, we talked a lot about what can we understand about psychological conditions in specific moments in the past, and reimagining them as a way of storytelling or more radical storytelling and remaking history. And specifically those myths of female virtues, of female strong woman got erased or got forgotten, and like bringing them back to life was a form of resisting those normative narrations. And so we did a more contextual research in Tunis or in Tunisia, and we tried to find the Dido story in diverse bodies, but not just human bodies, also the water and the soil, as I said before. So we worked with Mira Hamdi, we worked with Saida Khadra, and Saida Khadra is meaning the green one. She's a dancer, a famous one, but she's more famous not in a sense of the elite. She's coming from a more poor family and stuff, and for her dancing was a form of liberation, but then she was not supported, and she was divorced, and like she had a lot of struggle in her life. Or like Mira Hamdi, who also is constantly still as a queer person looking for space and looking for grounds where she can be, and working with them was a way of understanding certain emotions, like emotionally connecting to those states of like mutation of beings and their struggle in the present moment reality in a way. And
and I think also, like as you said in the beginning, how like using Dido as a way of really like listening to the present moment and representing different states of being without stitching like a linear sort of narrative, in order to maybe also like see how human and more than human stories and mutations and desires are within like the molecule, and how we can find different ways of representation without silencing or failing to hear what is there. So it's about like reproducing like these stories, but without representing these stories without reproducing this inherent form of colonial thinking and colonial representing. And I think also that tapping into mythology and using these different stories from mythology can help us think how to respond to the violence enacted on humans and living beings and even geological formations, and how we can maybe start to think beyond the exclusionary reactive boundaries of the human, and to recast our encounters with reality and its overlooked participants.
I have one last question about the setting and the landscape, because you've beautifully married the arid land or the desert, which actually they don't call it desert, and the coastline and the water that traces lines through land. I mean, some of the shots are quite breathtaking, especially this huge house or structure in the middle of nowhere, kind of covered in water. So I was wondering what your site research was like in choosing certain locations and where the concepts that you wanted to develop are most, let's say, ready to be absorbed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, in the work, we try to approach different landscapes and surfaces, water, soil, and sand as like material witness, which like foregrounds the expressive quality of matter. So we went to like swamplands like Sabkhat al-Sajumi or Sabkhat Ariana, and as you said, Shat al-Jarid, which is like the salt desert in the south that was imagined by Roder in his colonial project to be flooded and merged with the sea, because it's like the cancer eating away at Africa, as was said in the film. And then like in the Sabkhat and like the water swamps, you see how plastic has become saturated in them, and how new beings started like living on that, and how the flamingos there are called like the dirt birds, like they like to eat birds. So how they have like everything is going through like this sort of forced mutation, and then but there's still some sort of engagement, like you can no longer separate plastic from the landscape, and how this is all has become very merged. And then also on the way we went to Zerzis, which is very close to the Libyan border, and a lot of people go over water to reach Sicily or Lampedusa, and how meeting all these fishermen there, and how their relationship to the water, and how like to them it's a death-bringing matter, and to them it's something that like the fishes are something that they can't even eat, because they're eating all these dead drowned bodies. So imagining, like maybe trying to find ways to imagine that the Mediterranean has decided, but also like not speaking for it without silencing it, but then can it evaporate in the future as a form of resistance, so its inhabitants can come and emerge to the surface with like all these more than human abilities? Or how can we think of the Mediterranean being something that erases all these sharp border lines and allows for mobility and crossing? I think maybe Elisa, you want to add something?
Yeah, I mean, in regards to our research, before we went, we thought, okay, in Tunis we find a lot of waters, and we want to see how people inhabit and coexist with water. But then we realized that the access to water is very limited because of certain like urban developments. Like they sold the Lake of Tunis for $1 to create a project called Summer Dubai. And we realized that even the port is privatized. And so what we expected didn't happen. So what we did was kind of like finding access to certain waters and then seeing them as representatives for those mutations. So like these kind of swamplands. And then we did the trip to the south because we felt that it's very important when we talk about water to also talk about the memory of water in that dried out salt desert, because it contains the memory of water with this kind of halite and gypsum surface. And how we wanted to go to see, like, why would also, like, how is an empty space like this also inspiring someone to force and mutate this and like bring water and like kind of change the whole ecosystem basically, and changing the climate for the colonial powers and for like changing kind of coastline. And also witnessing the meaning of the Mediterranean from that side as something that is so much like a border. And it feels like we are kind of touching so many different places, but at the same time, I think we wanted to show that everything is so connected, like zooming out of the planet and zooming into those inner emotional landscapes of people. But then, because I think when we talk about water, we always want to talk about how much we are responsible also for the other and for the other elements, and that we are not disconnected from that. Yeah.
Thank you. That was a beautiful way to end the conversation. We're connected digitally, but I hope in July we can be connected in person.
In water.
Hopefully, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for watching the film.
Thank you for coming and watching the film and for your time and attention. We don't see you, we don't hear you.
Oh yeah, that's true. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.